Welcome to episode 171 of the G2 on 5G. It's the latest inside scoop on everything 5G. We cover 6 topics in about 20 minutes, and it's brought to you by More Insights and Strategy. I'm Will Townsend, and joining me again this week is fellow analyst Anshul Sag, dialing in from Viva Las Vegas for reInvent, right?
Yeah, I actually have a sticker. You can kind of see it, a sticker from the AWS telecom group booth at the expo, and I also got a cool pin as well. So that's the only
Nice.
swag I got from the show. I don't really do swag anymore. I've accumulated too much direct.
It kind of it piles up for sure. Yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't join you this week. I've had 2 international trips almost back to back, so I tuned in from home, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners saw a lot of live tweeting or Xing activity from you and I. But let's jump into our topics this week, and I want to get started with Dish. They're claiming the world's largest 5G VoNR, not to be confused with other terms, voice over NR deployment, with adding Denver as a market recently. And we've talked about Dish and their trials and tribulations. Denver is their home market. They're based in Colorado, and so basically they are claiming that they have the largest voice over NR deployment in the world across 89 markets that covers over 140 million people. And so the latest edition of Denver includes not only their core 5G mobile deployment, but voice over NR as well. And so I'm wondering, how relevant is this? And I'd love to get your take on, where do you see the applicability for voice over NR?
Yeah, I think it's possible that they could actually have the largest VoNR network, not to be confused with the other word. I think the reality is that I just think they missed the mark on the actual network itself. I
Right.
think that VoNR has a lot of opportunity to enhance the user experience and potentially deliver a superior, user experience for a lot of things and enable new capabilities. But if the network itself ain't great and people are running from it, and the company's struggling to keep management in place and funding available to grow the network, I just feel like this might have been a good thing. It was a good idea if other things had been executed properly. And I think
Yeah.
that's really the rub here is I don't think it's bad that they have VoNR, and I think it's going to be something that everybody deploys eventually. But the other operators haven't prioritized it like they have, and maybe they were right to. But I also think that they're deploying VoNR because they are essentially a greenfield network, and
Yeah.
they were able to just go, well, we'll just plan for VoNR from the beginning, and it'll be
Right.
a very light touch upgrade for us compared to literally everybody else. So
Hmm.
yeah, they can claim this as a superiority thing, but um, I just think they're struggling every other imaginable way. And maybe it's a glint of hope, but um,
Yeah.
they're in some real tough, dire straits here.
They are. This is an article, I believe it was Light Reading that I caught. And, from my perspective, Dish needs to do things differently. They need to find new ways to monetize things. And, voice over NR, it's going to provide, some enhancements from a subscriber experience perspective, but I struggle to sort of understand, potentially how they can monetize that, right? And
Mhm.
so thinking about, IoT. That could have been, a more discrete focus for them that they could monetize. Although IoT has been very difficult to monetize in the past, but I think just given just the reshoring of manufacturing and semiconductor production and the need to highly automate things, IoT is going to be a big part of that. And one of 5G's superpowers is massive device support. Like a factor of 50x over that of LTE. But yeah, and it's interesting, and they continue to sort of beat their chest around how they're leaning into cloud native and open RAN and that sort of thing. But I know, and that they've had a lot of challenges getting there. It's not as easy as they assumed it would be, and there's been a lot of management shuffle in the process. So hey, listen, I don't want to be negative. Hey, this is a great accomplishment for them. They're claiming to have the largest voice over NR network, on the planet. It'll just be interesting to see how that really sort of equates to revenue down the road. But let's go to your first topic. And, I saw you commenting on this, and, we may be taking a victory lap here, but I guess the big question is Apple going to kill its 5G modem efforts?
Yeah, so this is a this is something that's been developing since pre-2019. I've written a lot about it over the years. Um, and really, I at this point, I kind of feel like we're kind of beating a dead horse. Well, it's not dead
Yeah.
yet, but it might be a dead horse soon. Um,
Hmm.
but the reality is, this was kind of a rumor. Um, Nobody has really confirmed it in any meaningful manner. The reason why I say that is because the usual suspects who would kind of leak this kind of a rumor haven't confirmed it or leaked it. So I think right now we're still very much in the rumor territory, but Apple rumors tend to spread very quickly.
Yeah.
And Mark Gurman, I don't think has said anything about it in terms of confirming it. But essentially what it is Apple has spent billions and billions of dollars both in acquiring Intel's modem division, hiring thousands of engineers, opening a multi-billion-dollar R&D research development facility in Germany, hiring thousands of engineers here in San Diego. Well, not here,
Yeah.
where I live in San Diego, to poach people from MediaTek and from Qualcomm. So
Yeah.
I think this is one of those things where I think Apple needs to be successful here to be able to move into the 5G era and the 6G era, because I actually think long term, if you look at Apple's growth, their best growth is in services. And if they
Hmm.
really want to enhance the user experience down the road, having connectivity on all devices is how you sell more services. Because
Yeah.
without connectivity, services literally don't exist. So the way I look at it is, they're going to want to build the modem first as a discrete modem to save money, but then down the road
Hmm.
to integrate that modem into the SoC to save on space and power. And that way they can
Right.
really optimize the user experience and see how data is consumed, and have always on PCs, which literally Macs can't have today because they don't have a modem. And have the Apple Watch with the LTE modem in it now, um, enhanced even further with a 5G modem that's super low power, which, by the way, I believe they are using Qualcomm in the watch. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I just think that if you look at what the implications of having a 5G modem will be, they would benefit greatly from it being successful, but they have continually failed and they keep pushing it back. And there will be a point where investors start asking, is this worth it? Right?
Right.
Because Qualcomm
Yeah.
has been a reliable partner. Qualcomm has delivered them, good product, and they don't have a real competitor to switch to, even though I think they could go to MediaTek. And honestly, I'm
Yeah.
surprised they haven't. But we'll see. I think this rumor isn't, fully um, verified. I think the easiest way to verify this rumor would be kind of like we were talking earlier with the Qualcomm Apple relationship, where suddenly Qualcomm says they signed an extended agreement again. That
Yeah.
might be more of a confirmation of this than anything, and that's only because Qualcomm has to be transparent with their investors. So I think we'll find out. But right now it sounds pretty bleak. And
Yeah.
this was originally supposed to be a 2023 launch, and now
Mhm.
earliest we're going to get is probably 2025.
Yeah, for sure. And our chief analyst, Patrick Moorhead, I saw that he weighed in over social media on this as well. And he made some pretty good points. I mean, modem development is not easy. I mean, Qualcomm's been doing this for 2 decades. And
Actually,
and
more like
certainly, yeah,
4 decades.
right. Yeah, oh, really, 4 decades. Okay. Well, he mentioned 20 years. So he may have been referencing, a particular SoC, but
Hmm.
and then MediaTek, they've really been, coming up, on, kind of full speed and moving out of the value, into the performance category as well. So this, I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's it's a pretty high bar to do 5G modems. And, Intel basically, they gave up and they divested their, the IP that they own to Apple. So, hey, it's not easy, but it'll be interesting, to kind of keep our ears to the ground on, if this rumor, continues to catch steam. But I agree with you. Like, I don't think they're going to be anywhere, close to delivering something on their own until 2025. So expect to see more Qualcomm and Apple products as we move forward over the next year or so. But let's go to my second topic. I want to talk about Ericsson, and they publish a mobility report every year. And they this year, I actually today I joined a call to learn more about it. But just at a very high level, I'll share some stats. So a couple of things to note. One, based on Ericsson's research, they believe nearly 1 in 5 mobile subscriptions will be 5G by the end of this year. That sounds pretty realistic, to me. But a sort of a forward-looking statement is around 5G accounting for 25% of global mobile traffic by the end of the year as well. But they expect that by the end of 2029, which I can't even imagine 2029 at this point, that's so far out in the future. But they do believe 85% of the world's population will have access to 5G. Now, that there's going to be a lot dependent on that, right? Because there are a lot of parts of the world that are still unconnected. But we'll share a link to the report. It's pretty lengthy and it goes into quite a bit of detail. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, I actually haven't had time to go through their report, which I usually do, but because I've been here and back to back for the last few days, I haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to look at it. But based on what the numbers you threw out, I do think it's interesting that they said access but not connectivity,
Mm-hmm.
because for example, T-Mobile, I think they now cover almost the full population of the United States, but they definitely don't have them all as customers or connected.
Right.
So it is interesting, and with satellite, that could be potentially considered 5G, um,
Yeah.
and that would also offer the opportunity to have that claim of access. But I also think access is not just the end of it. We also have to make sure it's like actually affordable for people, which a lot of
Yeah.
satellite services are not. So yeah, I do think 5G is moving at a pretty rapid pace. I actually do think if you look at the growth numbers, it's doing better than 4G did, even though the sentiment is not the greatest.
Right. Yeah. No, I think we've mentioned that in the past as well, as far as we're seeing, sort of, an acceleration relative to where LT was in its nascency. So, but let's go to your second topic. And you've been in Vegas with AWS all week, so you'd be remiss if you didn't include something around AWS. So you want to talk about Project Kuiper and support for their private connectivity platform.
Yes, I also now know it's pronounced Kuiper. So
Kuiper. Okay. I
I
always
don't know.
mispronounce people's
It's not the
names and
To be fair, it's one of the words I think a lot of people don't know how to pronounce until they hear somebody else say it. Um,
okay.
but
I stand
basically,
corrected.
this is Amazon's satellite low Earth orbit network, and
Yeah.
they announced that they will actually offer a business solution in addition to the consumer solution, where they will directly connect Kuiper to a I don't know how to say it, but basically their own AWS private network. So that way, if you're an enterprise, you never actually have to hit the public internet, and you can trust your data to go over that network securely, so you can run enterprise workloads without necessarily worrying about data leakage. And then on top of that, they also announced deals with NTT in Japan to provide service to them, which was really interesting because that wasn't part of the announcement. But NTT Group has a lot of different business units. So they said that NTT Docomo, NTT Common, and Sky Perfect would collaborate with Project Kuiper to get that satellite connectivity. And I think it shows that um, Verizon is not the only game in town for them, and that they're going to have
Right.
international coverage, and they're going to be able
Yeah.
to take advantage of both the consumer and the enterprise connectivity to make satellite more robust, and I use it as a additional component carrier where necessary.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because I don't think you pointed this out, this is Docomo. This is the mobile network operation division of NTT. So very similar to deals that we've seen between T-Mobile and Starlink and AT&T and AST Space Mobile. So yeah, so I mean this is good. It just seems like Leo is getting really crowded, man. So I mean, is there enough room for all of these players to take a bite? What do you
We
what do you
don't
what do you
know. I
think about
mean,
that?
they've only thrown up two satellites, um,
True.
which
Yeah.
isn't anywhere near what SpaceX has. It is
Yeah.
more than AST Space Mobile, but AST Space
Right.
Mobile's satellite is also much larger. So
Right.
they're going to need a lot fewer of them. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure everybody is hopefully cooperating with the appropriate agencies to ensure we
Yeah.
get space collisions. But I do think that the night sky will get increasingly crowded.
Yeah. And brighter for sure. Well, let's go to my third and final topic. And I want to talk about Verizon. We don't talk about Verizon often on our podcast, but I caught this story on Mobile World Live, and Verizon is actually trialing a network slice for first responders. And I found it interesting because they're talking about their standalone 5G core and what they're doing there. And you know, Verizon, in my opinion, I think you would agree. They sort of been. It's been interesting. They've been sort of in third place, chasing T-Mobile and AT&T with respect to getting their 5G network deployed. They were the ones that were, they had the widest gap in mid-band spectrum. And but it's interesting that this news broke. It was just this week around what they're doing with slicing and basically slicing the network to be able to provide a very high level quality of service and prioritization for first responders. And today in mobile networks, there's prioritization that goes on that doesn't necessarily leverage network slicing. But if you start thinking about first responders and communication from ambulance to hospitals, when to prepare hospitals for incoming patients with life-threatening issues and injuries, and the use of video to do a lot of this, and telematics and that sort of thing, and telemedicine. It could be quite compelling. So when I've thought about network slicing, I haven't necessarily thought about first responders. AT&T, obviously, they've got FirstNet, and that's being adopted pretty broadly in the United States. But I thought this was an interesting use case. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. So I looked into this, and basically they did a test where they tested their commercial network with slicing and their commercial network without slicing. They were
Yeah.
doing live video feeds, but also live mapping. So when there's something really critical happening, you can know exactly where everybody is and see what they're seeing, which I think is really
Hmm.
powerful and useful. They
Yeah.
said that they saw a 53% improvement in the 95th percentile of time to first frame. So how quickly they were able to get the video feed up. They got a 5% improvement in start percent, a 68% improvement in latency, and an 83% improvement in jitter. So those are huge improvements
They
in
are.
areas where it matter. Latency and jitter are huge. So that we can actually get real-time video. Um, and yeah, they are working with Axon, which is like the leading provider of body cams for police officers.
Yeah.
They also do drones
Yeah.
and tasers and stuff like that. But um,
Hmm.
I think it's really interesting because they're already working with a pretty well-established provider of these cameras, these body cameras. So
Hmm.
um, I think it's a net positive because I think there's a lot of hesitance around policing and how police are treated and how civilians are treated by police. And I think having, live video feeds, or at least having real time data, will make everything better for, I think, most people, both the police and people who they're, are interacting with, because
Right.
that really makes sure that we hold people accountable, whether they're responsible or not. And yeah, I just think this is a really interesting application of standalone with video, which we obviously knew was going to be a
Yeah.
great application. They're able to do this perfect slice that really fits into um, what kind of applications we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, I think it's super compelling, and it highlights the power of 5G standalone, from especially from a latency perspective, and then what you can do with smart cameras and that sort of thing. And to your point, I mean, just think about that real time video and what that can do to improve public safety. I mean, it's sort of mind blowing. So, kudos to Verizon on that trial, and it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out. But let's go to your third and final topic, and you want to talk about Inseego,
Yep.
and they have a new enterprise fixed wireless access router, and they're partnered with T-Mobile, right? I mean, I know T-Mobile partners with a lot of different, FWA suppliers. I think they've partnered with Nokia in the past as well on the home CPE, but you want to talk about Inseego's enterprise
Yeah, so
router.
this is this is a partnership between Inseego and T-Mobile. One thing to note, when I looked into this, they already actually did launch this router on US uh, wireless, US cellular. Um,
USO,
so
yeah,
they already launched this on with US Cellular in May, but US Cellular does not have the footprint that T-Mobile does. So this is a quite a big launch for Inseego because T-Mobile is so big, and they are really pushing on the business side. And let's be honest with ourselves, there's going to be a lot more potential customers that can take advantage of this on the T-Mobile network than can on US
sure,
Cellular. And
right.
there's full support for mid band, and they're really looking forward to enabling 64 potential devices per hotspot, and it's got two LAN ports. It has a Snapdragon X6C2 modem in it. It has FIPS 142 certification, so it's secure. It's going to be well connected. What I didn't see was whether or not it has like a external connectivity. Um, I looked into that, but it's really like one of those things where uh, I would rather see an Inseego product than some kind of like a Netgear, because Inseego is like actually their business is doing enterprise routers. So
Yep,
um,
yep,
I think that there's a lot of opportunity here for both companies, and yeah, it uses all of the connectivity you would expect, and it has a Wi-Fi 6 connectivity. It's got USB-C ports, and yeah, I think this is the right kind of device. I don't see any antenna connectivity, but um, oh yeah, there is an external antenna. There we go. So it has an external
yeah,
antenna, which I think is super important for small businesses.
right.
And yeah, I just think that there's a lot of opportunity here. I've been talking to some of my friends who are small business owners that cannot get good connectivity. So I'm definitely going to be sending them this way because they're going to want to be able to use this as their primary internet connection, because everything else that they've been offered just sucks.
Yeah, you make a good point. And Seago is very focused on the enterprise. And if for our viewers and listeners that don't know this, I mean, Inseego is sort of a rebranding. I mean, it's Sierra Wireless, right? It's the MiFi is sort of Inseego's DNA and history and roots. And over the years, they've acquired different businesses, and they have a telematics capability that supports use cases for like supply chain logistics, transportation, that sort of thing. So I think they've had some challenges, financially. They've been sort of a roller coaster, but things seem to be sort of settling down for them. I know personally their CEO Ashish, and he's a great visionary, and so I think expect more things from Inseego as they move forward into the 5G world. So, but hey, man, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been in Vegas. You probably got to be exhausted. Hope you haven't been staying out too late and hitting the casino tables.
No, I'm not. I'm not a big
I
gambler. What I have been
yeah,
hitting is the Fiji waters. I'm on
yeah,
bottle number 4.
good.
You gotta hydrate while you're out here, otherwise you die.
Yeah,
Um,
you forget you're in the middle of a desert. So, but hey, man, it's good to connect. Another great podcast. Why don't you take us home?
Absolutely. We hope our viewers and listeners found this week's topics interesting. If anyone out there would like to provide insights on a specific topic for a future podcast, please reach out to us on social media. Will is at Willtown Tech. I'm at Anshel Sag. We hope you have a great weekend and please tune again next week and don't forget to rate us and subscribe.